Kristin Money, and I'm a licensed therapist here with 5 ways that you can heal after a toxic relationship. Number 1, this is not a one-size-fits-all approach. There will likely be a combination of things that are helpful to you in the end. Therapy being one of them. Based on my lived experience and the experiences of clients that I've worked with in the past, having that therapist who truly understands what you've been through, what that was like, and can validate that experience for you is vital to this process. I actually had my own experience with a therapist where I had explained what had happened to me with my trauma in a domestic violence relationship. After I had given all the details, really felt emotional and vulnerable, this therapist looked at me and said, "You do know there are signs, right?" I felt victim blamed. I felt torn down, re-traumatized, really. It was not a helpful experience for me. So this is exactly the kind of thing that I'm talking about when I say seek a therapist who knows and understands. And don't be afraid to ask them either about their experience and what they know about abuse, what their viewpoint is of abuse. That is of the utmost importance here. Step 2. When you leave a toxic relationship, you are going to question yourself. It's inevitable. It's normal. You're going to think, what did I do wrong? How did this happen to me? What signs did I miss? How did this happen? Please know and remember this. Think about it as many times as you have to. You didn't do anything wrong. When you are dealing with someone who is abusive, this is a calculated plan. There are no misses here. This was targeted. You didn't do anything wrong. You didn't intentionally miss something that could have been different for you. Even if you had the education like I did, if you had, the privilege that I did, the background that I did, the information that I did, it doesn't matter. You can still be blindsided by something like this. So remember, you didn't do anything wrong. Step 3, assess your support system. After you leave a toxic relationship, many times your support system is non-existent. Why does this happen? Lots of reasons. Mainly, the abuser will try to separate and disconnect you from all the people that you care about. So your job at this point is to start connecting again. And I know that sounds impossible at this point, but it isn't. Also, after you leave an abusive relationship, you will want to isolate. You will want to continue to question yourself and feel like nobody understands this. How will they ever look at me the same way again? Connect with your people again. Reach out to them. Look for the ones that are going to be supportive, listen, validate your concerns. The ones that will show up for you are the real ones. The ones that don't, they never had your back to begin with. If they can't understand that and can't support you and show up for you after a situation like this, then it wasn't meant to be. I once told a trusted boss about the abuse that I had experienced. Just the night before, I had experienced the abuse and had to show up to work the next day to appear normal. But I told my boss. What I found out is that she was very adept and quick to make situations look like my fault in order to have me removed from my job. So not everyone can be trusted. And that's one of the horrible things that we find out after we leave toxic relationships. Not everyone can be trusted. But the ones who can are worth sticking around for. Step 4. Step 4 is very similar to step number 3. In step number 3, we were talking about connecting to your personal supports again, connecting to people who understand and validate you. Step 4 is very similar. We're connecting with community. Community is so vital to healing, especially from abuse. So after you leave a toxic relationship, one of the things that you can do is try to find online support, online communities. When I left my toxic relationship, I was Googling left and right, trying to find someone out there who had experienced something similar to what I was going through. When I did that, I come across the term narcissistic abuse, read some of the things about it. I was like, okay, I'm locked in. This sounds exactly what I've experienced. Along with that, I found Reddit communities. Thousands of people who had experienced eerily similar examples of abuse. I couldn't believe it. I had no idea that this was such a common thing. So connecting with people in those groups really kind of pushed me to not isolate anymore, especially because it's online. That's so much easier than connecting in person. At least it was for me. So some of those connections and insights have stayed with me until this day. If it weren't for those people being open and honest about their experiences, I wouldn't have found it, and I wouldn't have felt so much less isolated. So connect with your community. Step number 5. After you leave a toxic relationship, you will probably find yourself experiencing a lot of symptoms that you didn't experience before. This is not true for everyone, but if it is true for you, pay attention. A lot of times when people leave toxic relationships, especially with psychological abuse involved, emotional, physical, any kind of abuse, you may experience panic attacks, flashbacks, nightmares, dissociation, so many symptoms that you could come across after you leave this relationship. So please know that this is unfortunately a common experience among survivors, and it's something to pay attention to. Pay attention to your body. Notice what is happening within you. Notice how you feel. Notice what has changed. As a survivor myself, after I left my abusive relationship, I realized after some time that I was actually experiencing severe panic attacks, migraines, heavy dissociation, to the point of having nightmares very often about the abuse. Eventually, I think within the first couple of weeks after I left, I had very intense flashbacks where I actually saw things happening over again. It was like it was real all over again. It was very intense, very scary. So please know that this is completely possible for survivors of abuse to experience after you leave a relationship. Your nervous system is still trying to regulate itself after that experience, and it just hasn't had the chance to do that yet. So please be patient with yourself and refer back to all of these steps, but especially step number 1 in finding a trained therapist who understands and can validate your experience, but really importantly, can spot those differences in your personality or can spot those symptoms and be able to tell you exactly what is going on. And that is my 5-step plan to healing after you leave a toxic relationship.